So last winter, I was living in Idaho, and I wanted to make a video about this board game called Patchwork, and I found a copy of it on Craigslist, and it was an antique version. Like, they don't make that same design anymore. So I'm talking to this guy to make sure all the pieces are in there, and I visit his apartment in Kellogg, Idaho. And I get there, and I'm about to give him the $6 that he had asked for. So I pull out $6 in cash. I said, no, I prefer you if you pay with my Square Pay, because he didn't want to touch the dirty cash. And then it dawned on me he wasn't even wearing a mask, and he's worried about cash. And I thought it might be a credit card scam, but then I looked, it is a legitimate Square, and I really wanted that board game. If I didn't really want it that badly, I might have suspected it was a scam and walked away from it. I put my credit card in, and then it hit me why he wanted me to use the credit card to pay for the game set. When I put in my credit card, it asked me how much I wanted to tip. And I was so upset at the sneakiness of this guy. I mean, we're talking about a $6 board game set. How much can you expect someone to tip? I was so upset about that I entered 1 cent. And when he saw what I had entered, he pretended to act really sick, pretended to be coughing, and basically telling me to get out of his home, basically. And so this is really, really funny. But unfortunately, I have a bigger problem with tips. A lot of times I go out to eat, or I go somewhere where a tip is kind of expected, and for whatever reason, people think I'm not going to tip very well, especially if I go to a restaurant alone. People have a bias that they'll get better tips if people go out as a couple. And so I get lousy service, and not surprisingly, I'm not in the mood to tip. And that whole bias just negotiates itself over and over and over again. I have to say, when I get really good service, I tip very well, though. Sometimes I have dietary restrictions. Sometimes the wait staff go above and beyond. I was in Mountain View, California one time, and the waiter there, he went to the back of the kitchen to take pictures, asking me if it would be a problem. They share certain utensils or whatever. It turned out that the stuff that he was worried about wasn't a problem. It was basically cooking different kinds of meat. That was it, and so that was okay. And he went above and beyond. So out of a $16 meal, I gave him $40, and I told him to keep the change. When I was in, basically, usually it's dietary restriction issues. I was in New York. I had this one waiter. As soon as I mentioned dietary restrictions, he's Japanese, and he had a big accent. And as soon as I mentioned the dietary restrictions, he exaggerated his accent even more. Basically, he didn't want to listen to it. And so I ordered something else that was safe. And the meal came out to be 38.60 some cents. And I was using a credit card. You sign the receipt. And I basically put in one something to make it a total of 40. And he thought that I had made a math mistake, that I had only tipped. He was like, "Excuse me, you only tipped like 2%? Excuse me. And he exaggerated his accent more when he went, excuse me. And so after that incident, I would go into the restaurant, and as soon as I saw him, I would just leave. I didn't want to deal with him anymore. And eventually I met a waitress there, a young girl, a typical American girl in her 20s, right, not Asian, and we get along very well. And she and I like to discuss various investments. And at the time, this was 2013, the price of gold was high, but as a result, some of the gold coins are going for a very low premium or even a negative premium, and we were discussing about that, and she was very fascinated with it, but she explained that she's just starting out and has no money to invest. So just before I moved out of New York, I went there and I tipped her a 1/10 ounce gold coin. So I'm not shy about tipping when it warrants it. But when somebody wants to exaggerate their voice or claim they have COVID-19 just to see if I'll tip, that's when I have a problem. I was in Warsaw when I was talking to this middle-aged woman in her 40s. she was giving me advice on how to talk to girls at the beach in Gdansk Bay, Poland. And I tipped her the rest of my loose change from my trip because I really didn't have a good use of it. It was about 200 or 300 Polish zoid, but she was like, she thought I was joking. I mean, she was like, "This is more money than I make in a month." I said, "Yeah, you can keep it. Have a good." It was summertime. Have a good summer. And so I'm not shy about tipping, but please stop playing stupid games and stop having biases about tips, right? I mean, what good does it do you to have a bias before somebody even tips you? Just it probably costs you a lot of mental energy to give bad service, right? So don't.